Hello and welcome. I'm Maria Ressa. This is Rappler Talk. There's a viral tandem. If you haven't heard it yet, you will. It's AlDub, TV star Alden Richards and internet sensation Maine Mendoza. They're known as Yaya Dub. They pulled in a whopping 26 million tweets in late September by using hashtag AlDub EB for love. AlDub EB for love. Fans of this on-screen tandem hit just a couple of million short of 28.4 million tweets on Super Bowl in February. How did this happen? How did this local viral sensation happen? With us today is a man who can tell us exactly why. Twitter Asia Pacific and Middle East Vice President Rishi Jaitly. He's here to talk about what he called a global phenomenon. He's also a Princetonian, by the way. So join the conversation. Send in your questions using hashtag Rappler Talk. Thank you so much.
It's great to be here on Rappler Talk in person. Glad this worked out.
It is really good to have you here. So how did this happen? What are you seeing about AlDub?
Well, first it's great to be here in the Philippines. I mean, the story of AlDub is a story of two things happening at once. It's our users, first and foremost, coming to Twitter to connect to a live story and have a live experience shared with others, and then to, of course, share their experiences in public. But importantly, it's also the story of the show. Yeah. The show paying attention to the audience, the show paying attention to dynamics on the show, right? The whole thing is actually a bit of an accident, how the way Maine was responding to Alden, et cetera, et cetera. And what's been most delightful for us to watch is the way the producers of the show continue to listen to the tweets. They're listening to you, right? They're actually listening to the tweets and making decisions about plot and format and all that informed by the tweets. So in many ways, Maria, it's a powerful example of Twitter and TV, Twitter and media. Right? In many ways, Twitter is kind of the second screen for all live experiences. And so it's no surprise that this live Massey experience in the Philippines is something that Filipinos have responded to the world over. And we as a company have taken note of it. It did not beat the Super Bowl record, but there have been more tweets about AlDub than this year's MTV Video Music Awards. We're delighted at the progress and just getting started, I think, with this trend.
So it was really, I guess it's like Inception. I keep thinking of this movie. You go into the dream world to change reality, and that's kind of the cycle that you said you're seeing, that the producers were taking the feedback from social media and changing.
I think that's right. I mean, I think the initial moment, right, you should have them on the show to talk to you about what they observed in Maine and Alden and why they ran with that storyline.
Right.
But it's also true that as soon as they started running with it, what Twitter gave them was a view into the audience.
Right.
That before Twitter, they never could have had. I mean, I've met with television producers around the world who tell me, you know, Rishi, before Twitter, I used to have engineers building apps that would let me talk to my audience in real time. And I think what they've observed with Twitter is validation, right? Your tweets around the world are validating that their storyline is resonating, and I think that's been helpful for them to keep going, keep this storyline going. And I know there are more climaxes to come, right? I mean, when will they meet again? When will they meet, et cetera, et cetera. So for us, it's a powerful example for others in the industry watching.
Right.
If you're a producer of news TV, if you're a producer of entertainment television, of sports television, listening to the audience. And actually running with the audience, right? Creating with the audience.
Right.
It's a powerful example for the world, actually, and I'm so proud that we see it in the Philippines.
So, some of the critics of this are trying to say, how could you get 26 million? And they look at the top influencers, where one of them, I think Carol is a star, a theater star in Singapore.
Sure.
She got retweeted at 1.5 million times a day. Are these things possible? 1.5 million times.
This is true. I mean, this was such a global phenomenon, as I said, that we had to look internally to make sure that these tweet volumes were in fact authentic. And as I said earlier, last weekend's 26 million tweets surpassed what the MTV Video Music Awards did this year. And we know it was a busy MTV Awards with Kanye's speech and much more. But this is real. This is not something. This is not a sideshow.
Right.
This is real media being created.
The Chief Justice of the Philippine Supreme Court said if only a fraction of the attention of on AlDub could go towards issues of justice, of governance, that it would be better for a country, a developing country like the Philippines. Any advice for government, NGOs who want to capitalize on the kind of power that's there?
What I would say is, first and foremost, very basic action item, which is lean into the conversation about AlDub, right? I think what the consumers of tomorrow want, the fans of tomorrow, the audiences of tomorrow want, they want politicians, government agencies, brands that lean into conversation on things that may not be in their self-interest. So I would say to, if you're an NGO working on social justice in the Philippines, be a part of the conversation about AlDub.
Correct.
Become human. Twitter is about personality.
Right.
And the brands of the future that win are the brands that personify. And so the first thing I would say is, if you're running a cause, lean into the conversation about AlDub. The second thing, of course, there's all kinds of lessons about ways in which to be spontaneous and serendipitous, embrace serendipity in the context of how you tell your story. You may have a PowerPoint deck around what you want the next month or two to look like, but there's nothing like actually letting the audience lead you, right, which is, I think, what we've seen in this story.
In terms of where this is headed, where do you think AlDub is going?
Well, again, I would talk to the producers. We've spent some time with them, and I got educated, frankly, on the show, and Eat Bulaga and all the things it stands for from 12.
Did you go to one of their shows?
Well, we had an opportunity to watch, and I've been tuning in on TV and doing my best to understand this phenomenon, embrace this, the Tagalog, etc. Where I think it's going, first and foremost, is I think what's good is that the show will continue to listen to the audience. But I think for us, highlighting this story worldwide, right, so that folks in other countries, this is something the world is paying attention to in the US and across Southeast Asia. And so making sure that producers of other content, whether you're a politician or a sports federation, can take the lessons of this and apply it in their context. That's our role, right? We're a platform. We observe innovation on the platform. We try to amplify it, and that's going to be our role here in the Philippines and elsewhere.
Let's switch and talk about what this shows about the audience. What does this show about this generation in the Philippines or outside?
The thing about Twitter is we are a medium that the audience defines the use of, right? We don't presuppose in any country how to use Twitter. So you go to Japan, the use of Twitter is quite different. 140 characters of Japanese text, you can say a lot, right? You go to Saudi Arabia, the use is totally different. So the use of Twitter in the Philippines, I'd ask you to tell me, what does this suggest about Filipino culture? What I've heard, very romantic culture, a culture that's very emotional, and certainly a culture that enjoys these kind of live experiences, particularly between noon and 2:30 while we're eating lunch. So I think in each country you experience Twitter, the conversation's different.
Right.
And I think what this tells us is that, that Twitter is vibrant in the Philippines. It is one of our biggest markets from a usage standpoint in Asia Pacific and around the world. And I'm delighted to be here in the Philippines, reinforcing to this country that we love you back. I think the Philippines has for years used Twitter in an imaginative way, and it just so happens I happen to be here during. And I think our message as a company is we love you back, we're noticing, and we're going to start highlighting the use of Twitter. I know there's a big election coming.
Correct.
And so it's a big year to be here,
yeah.
And to start highlighting users and how people are using Twitter.
So this is probably going to be the first social media elections. The first time when elections can actually elect a leader.
Interesting.
How do you see Twitter playing a role in these critical elections?
Well, I think it comes down to, in many ways we think of Twitter as the world's town square, right, where people come to do three things, really.
Right.
First and foremost, they come to listen. Right? What we tell government officials is that Twitter is your country's biggest focus group. Right. All the data is public. And so before you even tweet, the opportunity to listen, and if you're a citizen, to listen into the conversation. And we're delighted to be, make sure people are aware of the tools on Twitter to help you listen.
Right.
Then it's to interact, right? And then it's certainly to broadcast big messages. I don't know what the future holds. I'm not an expert in politics here, but I do suspect, I am hearing this is a big election. And our role is going to be making sure our tools and their value is clear in the market, whether you're a news organization or a candidate. And I do think this will be a Twitter election. I think this will be the country's first Twitter election. You can already feel it. I know there's people filing for candidacy this week.
Right.
So stay tuned for more.
Interesting. Let's move to a bigger thing, which is technology. So social media is really the first part where it gets rid of gatekeeping powers from the consumer to whoever is trying to reach them, right? But technology has pushed this growth curve, this exponential growth curve that was never possible before. We see it with Uber, we see it with the tech companies. How do you see this changing in a developing country like
Well, I think it gives, I mean, on the one hand, in a developing country, you have new opportunities for development itself, right? So with Twitter specifically, the Philippines is a country prone to certain disasters and typhoons, etc. I think Twitter gives the country new ways to actually think about socioeconomic development. But more importantly, on the economic side, it lowers the barrier to entry, right? One of the things that I'm excited about learning about from you and others is getting to know entrepreneurs in the Philippines who are doing cool things with Twitter data, things that I'm not yet aware of. I mean, probably educating me about how they're using Twitter. So technology lowers the barrier to entry, fundamentally, right? Whether
well, it did it for us.
It did it for you, right? Whether you're doing microfinance in Manila or whether you're doing, media and messaging. I think it is, and I think that's very exciting. And that's at a meta level what's possible with technology. And I think a country like the Philippines that is so cosmopolitan, that has seen so much attention around the world. I can't travel around and not see ads from Philippine tourism telling me about the Philippines. I think there's real opportunity to embrace technology as not only a driver of efficiency and development, but of creativity.
The UN just released the sustainable, what used to be called the Sustainable Development Goals, now global goals, and there's great optimism that technology can actually help these goals be reached. Do you see a role in development?
Yeah, I mean, for us, the interesting thing about Twitter is, we're a mission-driven company, right? We say that our mission is to give everyone in the world the power to share their ideas instantly. And so for us, as we think about the Philippines and this region, we're absolutely going to pay attention to opportunities to make a difference in general. And whether that's in an emergency context, whether that's working with young people who are driving their causes, etc. The internet and mobile phones now are ubiquitous in this country.
Right.
Twitter, as you know, was invented on SMS. Right. Yeah. Jack's first tweet was an SMS.
Jack Dorsey,
founder, right? Our founder and now CEO. My first set of tweets were SMSs. And so if you take a step back and think about not just digital but mobile, the power of Twitter in countries like the Philippines to communicate at scale, right, across 7,000 islands is astonishing. And what we're looking for here is people that want to play, that want to experiment with meeting this UN call for inclusion and development. That's what drives me, that's what drives the company. So looking forward to hearing from more people on Twitter and elsewhere.
We're certainly trying to play with it among many other players here. Text capital of the world before, right? Yeah. In terms of technology, you also worked for Google.
I did, yeah.
You've had a bird's eye view of all these. I mean, give us an idea. What does the world look like to you?
Well, I mean, for me, what's different, a lot of people ask me, so you were at Google, I was at Google evangelizing what I thought was the internet. I was in the US and overseas and other countries and in India specifically. It felt to me like I was evangelizing the internet. At Twitter, what it feels like we're doing is telling a story of people power. Two-way communication, right? At Google,
you're in the right country.
Yeah. Sorry. When I was at Google, it was a lot more about how Google tools and over time YouTube give storytellers the chance to drive efficiency in finding customers and building websites, email, right? With Twitter, it's now about the two-way conversation. And I know for those of us that use Twitter and love it, etc., it may feel like we're already there, right? Everybody uses this thing. We have a long way to go.
Yeah.
And the good news is that in countries like Philippines, we're growing. There's so much momentum, and people are still discovering every day. I mean, AlDub is attracting new users. I mean, if you haven't signed up for Twitter yet, you sign up and you can experience, Twitter gives you a front row seat. And I'm excited that AlDub, your use of Twitter during, let's say that, will lead to using Twitter to change your community, and all sorts of other things.
On AlDub, Mark Villaflores is asking you a question on Twitter. What was your reaction when finding out that AlDub Nation gained 25+ million tweets in a day?
Well, I mean, my first reaction was, gosh, almost belief but disbelief. I had to go and dig myself, and I read a bunch of articles as soon as I could. But really, like with all things I've observed in the Philippines, awe. I was in awe of the way this country uses Twitter. and with so much humility too. I mean, and so much authenticity, right? The folks at AlDub, I know a bunch of users started tweeting to us, is this true? Is this a record?
Right.
Is this a record?
Right.
Is this a record? But what excites me is that the leadership of the show, they carried on,
yeah.
right? They didn't need official validation to keep going, right? They continued to listen to what was happening on Twitter. And so our reaction as a company was applause and congratulations, and we're going to continue to highlight the innovation around the world.
Jack Dorsey has come back to be the CEO of Twitter. What, I guess, tell us from founder to today, how has it changed? What is he like as a...
Well, it's an exciting time to be at Twitter. We are, and with Jack back, I think it's a moment of inspiration for the company. He, as a founder, is very mission-driven about the power of this platform. As you know, he personally has used Twitter.
Yeah.
Whether it's in the Ferguson protests in the U.S. Or other causes, he believes in his bones the power of this platform to give people voice, agency, and power. That's why I work at Twitter. So it's great to have someone back who has the ability to inspire and the authority to drive us forward in a way really no one else can. So it's a fun time to be at Twitter, especially in this part of the world where we're growing. And a great example is, of course, happening before our eyes here in the Philippines.
Well, the fact that you're also Asian American, one of the interesting things for me is how it's breaking down cultural barriers.
Sure.
Or merging cultural barriers. And you grew up in the States, now you're in India. What role do you see social media, the internet, playing for this generation, for your generation? Yeah,
I mean, culture. It's bringing cultures together, right, in all kinds of interesting ways. I mean, it's a longer thing to talk about. I think in general, it's giving people exposure, right? The beauty of Twitter is that you experience content unfiltered, right? You can follow content, you can travel the world and experience conversation, really in any country. That's one of my favorite things to do. And Twitter will give it to you from the scene, from the source, unfiltered.
Right.
And so what I hope it's doing is what we call building empathy in people. I mean, we just launched an app called Periscope, which you may have heard of, right? Where you can literally broadcast live to the world via video.
Right.
So soon I hope a young 15-year-old in Manila will be able to open his or her Periscope account on every day at 12 noon, AlDub style,
right,
and talk to millions of people live. Right, produce a show for the world live on their phone. That day is coming. And what it does for the kid in New York watching the kid in Manila is it builds empathy in ways that are hard to quantify, but it's good for the world.
How do you make sense of it? The challenge when there's that many, you become so fragmented. How do you make sense out of it?
Well, so our job, there of course there's a whole cottage industry that's been built around Twitter and trying to make sense of the data, of the noise. Right. Our job is to kind of equip those folks with the data they need, the access they need, with the validation they need to go tell a story. So a lot of people tell us, what are you learning from the tweets today about candidacy filings? What are you learning from the number? Why are so many people periscoping from the Middle East? Or why is there, what is it about Japan that fuels such popularity for Twitter? Right, we have some point of view, but at the end of the day, we're a platform, and others sit around and watch what are trying to make sense of it. Rappler included, of course.
Yeah, actually, what's so interesting is, can we show some of just one of the maps that we saw of the AlDub? What's interesting for me is it's like pointillism, right?
Totally.
You're really, every person adds their voice, and then for the very first time, we can see emergent human behavior.
Right.
What uses of this, like give me the Twitter map. The Twitter map of it?
Yeah, this is the one where you can see the world lighting up, or the Philippines lighting up around the conversation.
And also just you can actually see the communities.
Yeah.
What ways have you seen others around the world do to harness this? Once they see a pattern, can they actually change the world with it?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're noticing specifically is, first of all, during live moments in these maps, in general, when something happens in mass culture, we see that impressions on Twitter skyrocket, right? When something happens in the world, people come to Twitter. And I think one of the things we're noticing in terms of world change agent types is that they're realizing that the first step in someone's journey to, let's say, signing up for a cause or voting for a candidate or learning about something serious on Twitter
Right.
is often something in entertainment, right?
Yes.
That's often the first step. And in a world where everybody's a media company, right? Everyone's a media company now,
Correct.
right?
Everyone's a journalist.
Everyone's a journalist. Everyone's a media
company. Right.
You have to think in those terms. You have to be really. You can't say no to genres and verticals or story ideas just because they're off for some reason, right?
There's no agenda anymore.
It all coexists now, right? And so the idea of you guys writing a story on AlDub, maybe that's something you didn't envision a year ago, right? But you're doing it now because it's where your audience is. And I think that that's hopefully a helpful starting point for people as they think about kind of changing the world and stuff.
Fantastic. Last thoughts, last words. This is the second to the last day you're in Manila.
Yeah, no, it's been really great to be here. As I said, we, as a company are in the middle of learning more about the Philippines. I hope people can tweet to me, tell me if they have ideas about
RS Jaitly,
about things we ought to be doing here in the market. I think for us, high potential is what comes to mind, and the lessons from many of these things that we're learning, you'll start to see us tell the story of this worldwide. And thanks for your hospitality. Great to be here.
No, it's good to have you here. Thanks so much. We've been talking to Twitter Asia Pacific and Middle East Vice President Rishi Jaitly on the global phenomenon of AlDub on Twitter and what you can do with it. Tweet your questions. His Twitter handle is @RSJaitly. Continue the conversation. I'm Maria Ressa. Thanks for watching.